Okay, so today we're going to talk about Disney's animated components of their Star Wars franchise. And that would include Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, and the Forces of Destiny cartoons that have recently popped up in the last 6 or 7 months, I think. And we'll talk about each of them and how they relate to one another and what your opinion is as well as mine. So let me ask you this first. I've asked you on occasion, would you like to watch Clone Wars or would you like to watch Rebels? In each of those cases, you have watched some of the episodes, but you generally tell me no. Why is that?
Because I don't like the animation.
And when you say that, what do you specifically mean about that?
I don't like how they look like.
Okay, so it's the way the characters are drawn, their appearance is what you're talking about. And it's, if you haven't seen them, it's this strange computer-generated hybrid look that isn't quite real. It's like some of the films that were out, like Polar Express, where they were trying to go for a real-looking, actual human-looking appearance to the characters, and it's not cartoony, such as the image behind me, which is from Forces of Destiny. It's this in-between kind of a hybrid look, and that doesn't appeal to you. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like the appearance of it either. I came to accept it over time, but it's a little jarring to look at, and it's specifically jarring would be my opinion, but it doesn't get in the way of me watching the show. But you've watched a few episodes, but you have no desire to watch them. Is that the only reason? And I'll correlate that to something, and it's actually something that bothered me, which is the old Christmas specials, specifically the Rankin Bass ones, which I loved as a kid. And I've tried to show Lainey and Colton those, and you don't like to watch those. So like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you won't watch. And Santa Claus is Coming to Town, you won't watch. And why is that?
I don't like the animation.
Right. She does not like the appearance of the characters. You'll watch Frosty the Snowman and any of the other actual cartoon-looking ones, such as the Forces of Destiny behind me, but you won't watch the others. And that bothered me because those were some of my favorites. You'll watch Peanuts. You'll watch those. So the style of the animation bothers you. You've watched a few episodes of Rebels, enough to know some of the characters. And have you watched any of the Clone Wars? I can't remember if you actually sat down and watched one with me. You gave them like 5 or 10 minutes, but I don't know if you actually watched one through. Did you watch one through?
Not through, I watched like 2 minutes of it.
Right, and then you're like, I'm going to go do this, and I'm left there watching it alone. So take that for what it's worth. It's interesting. The animation style of both Clone Wars and Rebels, which is the same, it doesn't appeal to me. The look of it doesn't appeal to me. But I do find the stories, I'd say 75 to 80% of the Clone Wars stories I really like, and maybe 60% of the Rebels stories I've liked. So I find that the storytelling is fairly strong in those series. I agree with you about the animation. The animation of like the spaceships in the space battles, that looks fairly good. That's similar actually to the movies, again, because the movies, the live action movies have special effects. So that they share that, and that looks well done, or that looks the same, but the characters do look different. Let's talk about Forces of Destiny for a minute. Now, what do you think about that?
I love it.
Okay, and I've watched those with you. They're only 3 minutes in length, most of them. That's the average length of it, and it deals with the characters behind me, which are the strong female characters that are featured in all the different Star Wars movies. Interestingly, and it's probably because they have a 3-minute time limit to them, the storytelling in them isn't quite as strong. They're trying to get through a quick message, and sometimes it's well done, and sometimes I don't think it's quite as well done. But let me ask you about it. Which one does one stand out in your mind as kind of like your favorite? Any of them? Like, give me one of the characters that you liked, whether it be Padme, Leia. Do you remember one of the stories with any of them?
Leia and Kira.
The one with Kira. You did remark on that one the other day. The one with Leia that we saw, and these are supposed to be canon, which means they're supposed to fit correctly into the Star Wars universe. The one with Leia was set on Endor, and it's during Return of the Jedi. And it's after Wicket discovers her, or she discovers Wicket, however you want to look at that, before she's gone to the Ewok village. And he goes off to help some other Ewoks, right? Is that kind of how that played out? And he's helping the Ewoks, and then she kind of gets a little bit involved. And then they go to the village, and somehow somebody there has a dress, a human dress that she can wear. And they deal with that. So that's got to be part of the Return of the Jedi canon. Did you notice anything in that episode? Did you notice how she was talking to Wicket, which she does in Return of the Jedi, but did you notice what happened when Wicket talked back to her?
He didn't talk like a person.
Well, he talks Ewok language, but did you notice what she did?
She could tell what he was saying.
She understood him. And that flies in the face of everything that happens after that in Return of the Jedi, where they need C-3PO to interpret what they're saying. She couldn't understand them in the movie. So I didn't quite understand that. And also in that particular cartoon, she didn't come across as the one that was solving the problem or making anything happen. The Ewoks were doing it, and they were being cute, and they were solving their own problems, and she was just sort of there. Other episodes of it featuring her and the other characters, they're more empowered and doing more things. So the actual characters are the ones that are driving the story versus the side characters. What else? What makes you like this one so much?
I like Leia, and I like the little Ewoks, and I like how they work together. I also like how the girl can fight, because most people think only boys can fight and only boys are a lot powerful. But she actually turns out to be more powerful.
And that's true of most of the episodes. There was the one with Ahsoka and Ezra. All of them are like that. Kira outsmarted Hondo in the one episode that we were watching. And for 3 minutes, they do tell the stories fairly well. I really prefer this style of animation. I love the cartoon look of it. You like the look of it? It reminds me of the Star Wars Holiday Special, which the best part of that was the Boba Fett cartoon. And it looks very similar to that, and I enjoyed that. I think that they're somewhat handicapped by the 3-minute time limit. There's only so much they can do in 3 minutes. I thought another aspect of it that was very interesting is that the big time actors are the ones that are voicing it. So Daisy Ridley voices Rey, John Boyega voiced Finn, Mark Hamill voiced Luke. I'm trying to think, there were a couple other ones in there that, of course, Ahsoka is voiced by the voice actress that voices her in both Rebels and Clone Wars. And the same for, I think it's James Taylor Arnold is the one that voices Obi-Wan. He does that as well. So they've got, for a 3-minute length story, they're getting Mark Hamill to voice Luke Skywalker and Daisy Ridley to voice Rey. That's great. And I think the look of it is dynamite. I really like the look of it a lot. What else do you like about it? Your other, what you said you liked before is great. I think that's wonderful, and I think that's exactly what they're going for with those, because they're trying to show that the female characters are forces to be reckoned with as well. I think that's part of the title, really.
Forces of destiny.
Mm-hmm. And that's the point. They are forces, and they determine their own destiny. They don't wait for other people to determine it for them. And I think they're making that point. The Clone Wars and Rebels series are important because they really do play into the canon of Star Wars as well. And maybe at some point in the future, when you can get around the look of it, you can give them a try, more of a try, and kind of see that. Interestingly, and I'm going to ask you this, some of the characters that are featured in Forces of Destiny are characters from Rebels and characters from Clone Wars, like Ahsoka and
Ezra.
Yeah, Ezra, who's what, Sabine, Hera, who is the green one with the.
That I think looks like the one that Han got frozen in.
Right.
Or
Yes. There were characters that looked like her from her race in Return of the Jedi. So that's what you're thinking of. So those are characters that are in Clone Wars and in Rebels, and you seem to like those characters in Forces of Destiny. So it really does seem to be the animation style that's getting in the way, because you like those characters when they're featured here. So maybe, like I said, in the future you'd be able to get around the animation of it. Anything else you want to add about it? Okay, so I guess we're going to go one.
But I do like I like how they did the 22-minute one with all the different stories. And I like how they put one part of an episode in the first one, and that was like the frame of what happened.
And that's a very good point. What they did is they took all of the season 2 episodes, the 3-minute episodes that comprise Forces of Destiny. They took all the season 2 episodes and put them into one big piece. And that piece was framed by a story that featured Maz and Hondo. And they would start out with that, and then they'd show 1 or 2 of the episodes, and then they'd come back to see how far Maz and Hondo had gotten in their story. And then we saw a couple more episodes, and then we had a third installment of the Maz-Hondo story, and then we had the conclusion of that at the end. So it was like you could sit there for one big kind of movie. And I'll just mention this briefly. Before the Clone Wars that we know that is canon, there was another Clone Wars series which was animated, and it was by Genndy, I think I'm saying his name correctly, Genndy Tartakovsky, who did Samurai Jack. And he did some pieces. They were on the Cartoon Network. They were also entitled Clone Wars. It's the first appearance of General Grievous, who's handled very well. A lot of the characters are. And some of his were 3-minute long cartoons, but they packed a lot of storytelling into that 3 minutes. And ultimately, they released them as 2 seasons, and they were 1-hour long DVDs, and the stories flowed. And if you can get a chance if you haven't seen those and you can get a chance to see them, I think you can maybe find them on YouTube. And the DVDs are quite pricey now because they're out of print. But for my money, some of that's even better done than, they're very well done. I think they were better than the Clone Wars that we got, that Disney now holds as canon. And I think they were very, very well animated because it had a distinct style, but they had a really good story to them. And that kind of reminds me a little bit of Forces of Destiny, but they were able to pack a lot of story in 3 minutes. And hopefully, if Forces of Destiny keeps going, they'll tell more, even more powerful stories in that 3 minutes, and give the characters more to do that has a bigger stakes for them. You know what I mean, and what have you. Anything else? You had better points than I did today, I think. So that's good.
I kind of like Clone Wars. I don't like it, but I don't think it's bad. It's kind of in the middle.
I think the interesting thing, the thing that you might find interesting about Clone Wars, or at least that I do, is I love Obi-Wan, and he's in there. Clone Wars, the series, gives us a chance to see Anakin as a hero, and we never really get that chance in the movies. He's never. We wonder why he was so heroic and he had this fall. And if you see him in the Clone Wars, we get to see that. And Ahsoka becomes a great character. And I'd bet money that you would love the character of Ahsoka if you got to see that series. She's Anakin's apprentice, and her story, her arc for her character, grows so much over the course of the series. And then she comes back in Rebels, and eventually we're gonna release something here that's some ideas that we have for Episode 9 and how that could be fixed to make the fans happy. And we deal with these animated series as part of that canon and how they could affect it. But she's kind of a fan favorite, and I can see why. I love that character. So those 3 characters, Anakin, who it's hard to like in the movies because of the way he's written, his situation. He's very likable in the Clone Wars series, and then Obi-Wan, of course, is a lot of fun, and Ahsoka's a very good character. So that's something to look for in those. All right, well, Let's talk about them one by one. So Clone Wars, and it's going to be a little hard for you but you could still weigh in on it because you obviously have an opinion about it. Is Clone Wars yummy, crummy, or I guess in the middle now we're using Mr. Jeff's suggestion of edible. So not delicious, but edible. So is it yummy or crummy, or in the middle for you, Clone Wars?
Edible.
Edible. And in Clone Wars, because of the storytelling, is going to be yummy for me. How about Rebels?
Crummy.
And Rebels for me is going to be edible. It's in the middle. Some of the stories I think are really good. Some of them I'm not very interested in. And of course the animation I'm not crazy about either. And Forces of Destiny.
Yummy.
And for me, Forces of Destiny at this point is going to be edible because I want to see stories that have higher stakes involved in them with a little bit more impact. But I like where it's headed, and I do like the animation style. So I guess that's where we're at. So I guess that's going to be it. But, since this is the animated episode, we're going to tell you to tune in next time. See what I did there?
Yeah.